Riddle me this. How can a manager who doesn't even believe in formations be so successful? Well, Brighton manager Fabian Hurzeler, he's himself said it. This isn't hyperbole. He doesn't like formations, to the point where many believe that he was playing a 3-0-7 formation, but he doesn't like formations, so it doesn't count. Now, his bold tactic of emptying the midfield has seen Mitoma become a player reborn, Minte thriving despite having never played in the Premier League before, and, crucially, Danny Welbeck hitting his prime at the age of 33. But how is he doing such wizardry? Let's find out, shall we? If we can. We can. So these average positions against Manchester United caught my eye because of where two certain players are. Firstly, James Milner. He's supposedly playing as part of a double pivot here. But he ain't. When you dig that deeper into his heat map, you can see that he's rarely in a central midfield position. So, naturally, you think that the other central midfielder, Billy Gilmour, cover for me, says James. You sit deep. No, that's not happening. It's wrong. You're wrong. Because he was also given the freedom to move around the pitch to wherever he wanted, to an extent. Now, Billy Gilmour isn't at the club anymore. He's gone to Napoli. Okay, that's important to say. But Hurzeler has possibly taken it to an even further extent with his use of Carlos Baleba. Is he a Baleba? I certainly am. People don't call him Baleba. Some call him Baleba. I'm calling him Baleba because I enjoy it and it allows me to do puns. Shall we carry on? But how did the no midfield tactic actually look against Manchester United? Because if you remember, Manchester United lost that game and they were pretty confused. So this is such a great example of just how brave this tactic is. Because Brighton's goalkeeper, Jason Steele, he's got the ball, he's in possession, yet you can only see 3 Brighton players in the whole half, essentially, for Brighton. Why is that? Well, if we go back to the average positions, you can see that Welbeck and João Pedro are central, but incredibly high as well. And this is to allow Jason Steele to bypass the midfield and attempt to play direct into them. By emptying their own midfield, it leaves a lot of space, but it also clears out all of the Man United players from those central areas and takes them away, which therefore leaves those passing lanes for Steele to find, as long as Jason Steele can evade the press. Now, Bruno Fernandes is coming from the right-hand side of Jason Steele, so Jason Steele's able to switch over to this left-hand side, and then he's able to drive the ball into the channel. And you can see exactly what I mean right here. And in doing so, he gets it directly into the feet of Welbeck. And he has taken 5 Man United players out of the game. Now, this is obviously a very clear tactic from Hurzeler, in my opinion, because of how quick and how swiftly they move. João Pedro stays nice and close in his positioning to Danny Welbeck, and he is always ready to receive the layoff pass. And that's exactly what Danny Welbeck does. He plays that ball to João Pedro, and then they're on their way. And as you can see, as we move it on, now you've got something pretty exciting if you're a Brighton fan, pretty scary if you're a Man United fan, because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with the whole of the Man United's half to attack, which means space, which means it's easier to break and get through an opposition. And crucially, of course, 1, 2, 3. That's what we in the biz call a 5-on-3 situation. Like I'm in the biz. I guess that's the end of that bit of analysis. Wrong, because this is where James Milner comes in, okay? Now, where is he? There he is, the young pup. James Milner in the centre circle, ready to pounce. Now, why has he got so much space? The reason he's got so much space is because he is told to stay out of the build-up phase. And as we saw earlier on, of course, absolutely nowhere to be seen here, pushing the defence higher up, taking midfielders away from those central areas. And as we move it along, we have that lovely interchange, and then it's 3-on-5. But once a team is then defending, I think they would generally be concerned with the wingers, right? Mitoma and Minte, who we'll be talking about in due course. But of course, with this little bit of interplay here as well, you're going to be thinking about Danny Welbeck. He's just bounced it off and he's on his bloody way. So that's a threat as well when it's the centre forward. But no one's really thinking about James Milner. And what is James Milner phenomenal for? Stamina, at whatever age it might be. And he sees this space. And so with that focus on those other players and an overload and lots of space to drive into as well, This is where someone like James Milner can be such a threat. It's those secondary midfielders in the final third that can really, really sort of ghost in, as I said. And as we move it along, he does exactly that. You can see it from this movement, this driving run all the way across. And essentially it is him against Kobbie Mainoo, who's all at sea at this point. And obviously, what is there, like 75 years between these two? But he drives. And actually, he's really unfortunate not to get himself a goal. He sneaks the ball away and they I think Delot maybe clears it off the line. But that ghosting run is something that highlights for me the fact that no player under Hurzeler is what they seem. And no player, very certainly, is confined to one role. Now, Carlos Baleba is usually considered as a defensive midfielder, but this, as I said previously, is a myth because even he doesn't sit in midfield, because against Chelsea, Hurzeler instructed him to constantly be in line with Caicedo and therefore to have constant dialogue with the Brighton attack and how they pressed as a five. And it was fruitful from Baleba. If we move it along here, what you can see is by able to work as a five, as a pentagon of doom in the final third, it's going to cause pressure. It did cause pressure, and Baleba himself got himself a goal out of it. And that's something, of course, that would not have been possible had he been 30 yards back in a deeper position. Now, a big reason Brighton are able to vacate the midfield is Jan-Paul van Hecke. He's been brilliant this season and not really got any credit whatsoever, actually. Now, despite the preferred option being to play directly through the thirds, Brighton do sometimes, well, quite regularly, actually, they go shorter from the goalkeeper. And this could be seen as very risky when you've got no midfield options. And it is a bit of a game of bluff, but Van Hecke is great at carrying the ball. He ranks in the top 10% for progressive carries in Europe. And this is why it's so important for Brighton, because by carrying the ball here, he's now able to close the gap. If we move it on, you can see how much higher he's got, and that's closed the gap between himself and the midfielders, and it's also breaking that first pressing line from Manchester United as well at the same time. And by carrying the ball into midfield, into that midfield third, more importantly, it does two things. Firstly, he doesn't need to play the ball into midfield in this area here, which is what you would normally see, right, if the defender is, further back. So that means that you can do that higher up the pitch, and we see exactly that when it comes to James Milner being able to be in the opposition's half, and the whole team is able to take up higher positions. But the second reason is that it opens up various triangles higher up the pitch as well, and you can see it right here. We've got one here, and of course, if you played it into Milner, he's got that pass straight away. And then once we do that, we've got another little triangle here. If Milner is able to turn, you've got another triangle here, and so on and so on. Of course, these guys are over here, but more importantly, down this right-hand side, Van Hecke opens up all of that by being brave. And it does feel back to front, but it's, as I say, it's that little game of bluff. But by taking those players away, I think because it's new and a bit scary for the opposition, it then does create just a lovely big bit of space here. And again, that passing lane channel, that's really, really important, because when you're in this area of the pitch, you have options to go this way or this way. Whereas if you are out wide or in a different position, it might make life a little bit difficult. And that is why most teams look to get the ball and to play it into a midfielder in this area of the pitch anyway. And these triangles have been crucial in unlocking Mitoma and Minte this season. Minte's looking fresh. So this is Minte's heat map. There he is. From this season, and as a winger he generally tends to stay as high as possible throughout, and in doing so he often finds himself on the shoulder, and this is where he wants to be as he receives the ball close to goal. But from a tactical perspective, it also plays a part in preventing the opposition fullback from overcommitting in attack. And this is what it usually looks like when he's on the ball. He's always direct, and his dribbling is one of the best parts about him. He's averaging 2 successful dribbles per 90 this season, but is relentless in his directness throughout. And the important part about Brighton is whilst Minte is squaring up an opponent, his teammates rarely stay still, and we can see that in James Milner's run in this direction. Again, ghosty Milner up to his old tricks again, because what he does here is, although he's squaring up that defender, James Milner drives across him. That subsequently drags 2 defenders, actually, by this point, if we move it on one more. There you go. 2 players and their body language. Also, that's a big part of this, is the weight balance is crucial here. And both Michael Keane and Tarkowski are being dragged across. It's a great example of how a midfielder operates to create space for others in the Brighton system. And Milner creating this space then allows Minte to move inside, something he's excellent at doing with his quick changes of direction. Then Minte is able to play it across to Welbeck because of the initial space created by Milner. The constant movement of teammates whilst Minte is on the ball makes it very hard for the opposition to double up on Minte, because they will routinely get dragged out of position by the movement of Brighton's attackers and midfielders. But Mitoma is slightly different because he often has Pervis Estupiñán on his side, who doubles up as an offensive threat. Now, Mitoma is also different because he will pick the ball up in sort of deeper positions, as you can see from his heat map. And also Mitoma is able to pick up the ball in these half spaces as well, because Estupiñán has been able to offer up that width. And you can see it here. He then gets himself on the ball. He's able to do dangerous things from a more central position. And because he's now picking up the ball in these types of areas, he's able to be a lot more creative. Under De Zerbi, he was always asked to stay very wide. In this Hurzeler system, he has the freedom to move inside frequently, certainly with the ball. However, there's another curveball, but at the same time, there's the same principle of duality to his role. Because when the ball is often on the other side, you'll often see him remain high and wide to target the back post, something that is relatively easy for him to do with how much central threat Brighton have by having those two central midfielders and someone like James Milner who make those runs into the box as well. And due to his positioning, he actually got an assist versus Manchester United, but also scored against Everton doing the exact same thing. Staying at the back post, the cross comes in with a bit of pace. If it goes all the way to the back post, then you've got Mitoma on it, putting his crosses in and allowing the team to score goals. But also because of that central threat, there's an overload there as well, isn't there? 1, 2, 3 against those two because of the constant movement. But one player's improved more than any other since Hurzeler took over at Brighton, Danny Welbeck. That guy Welbs. What a guy he is as well. With 4 goals in the opening 7 matches, he's only 1 goal away from equaling his Premier League tally from last season. And with a career high conversion rate of 21%, he could easily get double figures the way that he's going. And there's a reason Hurzeler loves him so much. He's that guy Welbs. That's what... No, it's more complicated than that. Welbeck is one of the sneakiest hold-up strikers in the league. He's fantastic at working in the blind spaces of defenders. For example, Danny Welbeck starts in an offside position here before making a darting run at the right time to get himself on the ball. And as we move it along, he does that. And the important thing now to see is how is it affecting the opposition? Well, look at Levi Colwell's position here. He is now scrabbling about. His body weight is all over the place. And what's great about Danny Welbeck, as we move it on one more, is that now he's panicking a little bit. He's looking to turn. And by the time he's got to him, Danny Welbeck's not taken 3 touches and messed about with it. He moves the ball on really quickly. That movement, but also the efficiency of Danny Welbeck is a huge part of his play as well, which shows his kind of wisdom and experience as well. Because Levi Colwell, with that great movement, he's kind of taking him out of the back line. And this quick bit of movement leads to a whole chain of events that really hurts Chelsea. Levi Colwell is now scrabbling about. Danny Welbeck plays the ball really quickly. And as I say, this sets off a chain of events that allows Brighton to progress up the pitch initially very quickly, but then from that standpoint to then go again and let all these moving parts make their moves. And that includes Danny Welbeck, because as we move it along, you're able to play a quick triangle there with the pass to Baliba here. But Danny Welbeck doesn't stand still. Again, that back line of Chelsea hasn't got itself back into line. And so Levi Colwell is sucked out of position. There's a nice gap here. The back line, which you would love to be like this, is not like this anymore. Cucurella has been sucked in as well, actually. That's not even your left back. And as we move it on one more, the great thing about Danny Welbeck is that he doesn't stand still in build-up play. He's laying the ball off. It's quick movements. It's double movements. And then he's got the ability, even at the age of 33, good grief, to drive into that channel. And that whole chain of events came from that clever bit of movement initially, an efficient pass, and then the ability to drive into those areas and affect the game from an athletic point of view as well as an intelligent one. The reason Welbeck is so good is because he is relentless. He's able to be that hold-up focal point striker whilst also switching into an advanced forward in a matter of seconds. And that's one of the reasons why Hurzeler loves him. He's able to do the role of 2 strikers at once. And this plays a big part in creating space for the second striker, Rutter or João Pedro. This is a great example of him drawing focus away from the second striker. Van Hecke is on the ball, and Welbeck, at first, at least, looks pretty disinterested in the ball. But like a flash. He bounces in. Van Hecker is happy and competent enough to just drive that ball into him. So sharp. The layoff comes. And once that layoff comes, what's more important here is that quick reaction and moment. It sucks in Morgan Gibbs-White. And if we move it on one more, you can see that now, by taking those two players out, you've now got a passing lane for Rutter. And Rutter can then drive into space and into that zone 14, that very dangerous area of the pitch where so many goals take place. A passing lane is now opened when 3 seconds prior, the opposition thought they were safe and steady. And we haven't even spoken about goals. Whilst Welbeck's movement is plentiful in build-up, it really is. The reasons he's been getting so many goals this season is actually because he stays still. Look at his goals map. There are 2 almost on the goal line here. And that's because of how Brighton overload the box and the constant movement that they have. It's been very, very easy for Welbeck to stay still in the box at times and be completely unmarked. This goal against Manchester United being a prime example of that. Danny Welbeck's current highest goal tally for a Premier League season is 9 from his time at Manchester United. With 4 goals from 7 matches and averaging 0.61 goals per 90, how many will he score this season? Regardless, I can guarantee he will always be in the team because of what he offers Brighton in build-up through his movement. Brighton and Hurzeler are only just getting started too. They could be in line for a huge season.